Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
There are moments in life that are so special that you have to capture them and save them forever. They are one of those once-in-a-lifetime events, like your baby's first steps, the first time you bring your family pet home, or your daughter's first dance performance. With iPhone 15 Pro, more storage means you don't have to delete anything that can become a lasting memory one day. And it's important to be able to share these moments with family members who weren't there to see them in person. Store more, share more. Connect with iPhone 15 Pro on AT&T. Get iPhone 15 Pro on AT&T and get an iPad and Apple Watch for 99 cents per month each. AT&T. Connecting changes everything. Limited time offer. Requires 0% APR 36-month agreement on each. Well-qualified customers. Other terms and restrictions apply. See att.com/iPhone for details.
Quick programming note at the top of this episode. I completely butchered Steven's name, and I am sorry about that in the intro. And by this time, the intro's all recorded, etc., etc. So I just kept it in there because I only mispronounced it once. But his name is Steven Christian. I know that now, and I apologize profusely to him. But yeah, Steven Christian from Anne Boleyn. You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. What's up, everybody? How are you doing? I am actually overseas. I'm in the United Kingdom for Outbreak Fest. If you don't listen to the Outbreak Festival podcast, first of all, there's a link in the show notes. Do it. Subscribe to it, listen to it, because if you like this interview style, you will like that show because it's just an extension, I guess a sub-label or, whatever. You get it. You like music interviews, you should listen to that. But I'm excited I'm over here, and I'm also excited that I get to bring you this conversation with Ace Inders from the early November. Now, if you're following the show, you know that this podcast travels all over the place in regards to genres, styles of music, whether it's emo, indie, punk, hardcore, metal, whatever it is, as long as it's that, DIY nature of it all. And I know maybe on the surface level, you're like, early November? Like, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. Well, first of all, no, because Early November is a good band. And second of all, I mean, they definitely got their start in the, Warped Tour era. And they definitely were playing, in front of 40 people when they first started. And Ace is a incredibly prolific musician. So I feel like I'm justifying why Ace should be on here, but I'm not doing that. I'm just, laying out the facts as they were. But the early November just released a new record. It's a self-titled record, came out on Pure Noise Records, friend of the show, friend of myself as a human being, and I love what the label does. So you need to listen to that record because it's really, really good. Obviously, I'll play a little bit of it as we go into the interview with Ace, but yeah, just an incredibly interesting human being. And we had a really, really good conversation in ways that, I don't know, I like to get deep. And I know that I was trying to think of a different word, but we go pretty introspective here, able to kind of peel apart the layers of him as a human, why he continues to create, all that sort of fun stuff, the things that you like about this particular show. But anyways, you can always reach out to the show via email, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. That's the number 100. Love to receive feedback, pitches, whatever the case may be. Love that. You can also leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page. It helps out tremendously from a algorithm experience. Same thing can be said on Spotify, except all you need to do is be on your mobile device. Just press a star rating, and then boom, you're off and running. I won't bother. Well, I was about to say I won't bother you anymore, but I can't tell what you're doing individually versus the other person sitting next to you, digitally speaking. So you get it. I'll continue to bother you until you do it. And then even then I'll be bothering you, but I guess it's not a bother because you're getting this for free. So whatever, tit for tat sort of thing. Anyways, let's talk about the weekly recommendations, okay? Because I have really enjoyed doing this, and I've got a lot of positive feedback in regards to it, just as far as, exposing people to new music. And it doesn't have to be new. It can be old. It can be like 10 years old, 20 years old, maybe something that's like, a deeper cut on a particular record label. But this week is a band called The Mall. And they released a record called Time Vehicle Earth back in 2022. And Convulse Records was smart enough to pick this up, re-release it to the world, and get it to a broader audience, because I love what Convulse does. Anything that comes out on their label, I'm listening to and I'm engaging with. But if you're a fan of like Drab Majesty, Homefront, where it's kind of like, aggressive punkish stuff with a very synth heavy thing, like Drab Majesty, I'll be honest, like they're not technically aggressive. Homefront is obviously more, akin to 77 style punk, so to speak. But anyways, that is a great record. The Mall, Time Vehicle Earth on Convulse Records. Go listen to it. There's a link in the show notes to my weekly recommendations. It helps out, you getting into new music. So anyways, let's talk to Mr. Ace Enders right now.
Crown ourselves, give the pageant a twist, and not be warned that no one will show. Now we all want the same thing.
I was aware of you, obviously, in the drive-through era, as it were. But frankly, I didn't take you seriously, and I don't mean that in a bad way, until The Room Is Too Cold, where I was like, oh, there's some depth to this band. I was like, they're not just kind of just whatever, like for lack of a better term, it felt more serious, where it was like, you could just, and there's no shots against bands that obviously, just are completely content playing, sort of, for lack of a better term, surface level music. But you guys, that to me was like, oh, okay, there's a lot more going on there. And I'm sure some of that was, just unintentional, because that's like what happens when a band grows up a little bit and is able to release more music and all that sort of stuff. Did you I realize it's probably hard to put yourself exactly back in that headspace, but do you think that, is my statement reflective at all with either stuff that people were sharing with you at the time? Is that somewhat reflective over maybe where you were trying to obviously take the band to be like, oh yes, we are a real band, not just like this cute emo thing or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you hit it on the head with that. Honestly, existing back then as a young drive-through band, everyone assumed that we were a certain type of person, a certain type of band. I mean, myself, I've always been more on the serious end. I've always been like, especially with music, I've always tried to respect what it has done for me and share that. But as far as like what we used to get back then, yeah, it was very much a struggle to be taken seriously in the beginning. And when it came to record The Room's Too Cold, it was definitely we went into it with the idea of being like, okay, we're going into this with not glossiness, not like nothing fake about it. I wanted it to be as real as can be. But I honestly went into the tracking of that record. I remember very clearly strongly suggesting that we don't use tuners at all. I'm like, if we can't tune by ear, then we shouldn't be doing this. It was very much, I wanted it to be super authentic. And, that got vetoed. Fortunately, I'm glad we used tuners. But as far as everything else on the record, it is super raw. If I was out of key, I was like, then I'm out of key. That's what I do. If it's not perfect, then it's not perfect. We're not going to add reverb. We're not going to add delay. We're not going to do like compression on the vocal. Like I was very in my head about that stuff, because I wanted it to be a representation of who we really were at that time in life. And I felt like, that was a way for me to express, I guess, who I really was as an individual musically, as well as what the band was at that time, without even knowing that. I just knew I had something to make like that, and it was it was an interesting time. It definitely hit it on the head though, with people not taking us seriously, especially back then. Emo was like a dirty word. You couldn't be like, we're an emo band. You would get, especially if you're playing like hardcore shows and whatnot, because a lot of our, shows that we played were with heavier bands, and it was a very, we would get messed with a little bit. But other than that, I really, I think it was, like you said, the natural growth as well, and just wanting to put your best foot forward.
Yeah. There's a lot of threads I want to pull on in there, but one of them, to your point because obviously there's this, torch bearing that happens where it's like, okay, here's, first generation emo. I mean, every single genre has it, where it's like, I think we're on the 17th iteration of ska or whatever. But like, especially around that time too, there was this, very bright dividing line of, okay, here's the bands that obviously came from, whatever the hardcore scene and, screamo, emo, whatever you want to call it. And then obviously the more slicker, polished stuff that, where the word emo changed meanings, because obviously it was a much larger thing at that time. And so I like the way that you're talking about that, where it's like, you knew enough to be like, okay, we didn't necessarily to your point, like we weren't shying away from the fact that like people were paying attention to us, but we wanted to bring something that was a little more, tangible and touchable, as opposed, because to your point, I'm sure it would have probably been really easy to obviously just like continue on the trajectory of what, not to say, because I mean, The Room Too Cold was clearly a successful record, but just like that idea of being like, all right, so we need to write more songs like the first stuff in order to get that next, huge thing and be like all these other bands that were doing it.
For sure. And I think like it's been deeply seated in me to push against grain when it comes to that. I mean, I feel like I've always been of that mindset of not doing everything that the crowd is entirely doing at that time. And maybe that's from my childhood, maybe my upbringing of like, just being alone in my own island most of the time and just observing. I've always been a very observant person. It's like that, to me, was very much of, birthed from that place as well. And not wanting to just join the crowd. I'm very much not a crowd joiner, but that's probably a big reason of why that we decided to go that direction, for sure.
Yeah. I'll ask that question now, where it's like I know that it is most of the, teenage experience to push against everything that, you're surrounded by, whether it's your, your peers, your parents or whatever. But you said that was kind of deep seated in who you were. Were you always that? I mean, I'm not saying contrarian where you're just like, you're constantly, being edgelordy and trying to bump people out, but like, was that always kind of who you were?
I think I was very much morally sound, especially when it came to something that I cherished as, I mean, it can only sound cheesy, but like for me, writing music changed my life. It was something that opened a door for me, that taught me how to express myself, taught me how to have a conversation with people. Like I came from a very weird upbringing in the sense of that I was probably the slowest kid in my entire school coming up, and I didn't read. I've never read a book still, because letters jump all over the page. So it's like I was put back then in classes where they didn't know how you deal with it in a small town. And it was like you're in classes with non-speaking English people who you just sit by yourself all day pretty much and have, I would do anything but work in school because I didn't know how to. And I would get made fun of for that. And I would get, feel isolated from that. And the psychology of it, I didn't understand back then what was actually happening. It's now looking back that when we talk about that, it's not that I'm being contrarian. It's more of I'm looking at something that I respect so much, and I want people to not respect it, not for my music, but just in general respect it and respect the idea for what it is and how it can benefit people in their life. And anytime that I've ever seen, people go against that, really is like, that's when I would, step up and do something, out of the box to show, or something different, because it was like, to me, it was like, this should be cherished. This should be something that we hang, we have a little more pride in. And I mean, you could relate that to everything right now. Like there's so many songwriters I know, because I had since from that time become a songwriter, writing for other artists and whatnot. And there's so many people in the industry right now turning to services like ChatGPT and saying, we're writing hit songs now quicker than ever at a velocity that, was unpredictable a handful of years ago. And now you're seeing the content shift because of it's not necessarily fully human in the same way that autotune came in and changed the game for so many people. It's like, I fought that for a long time. I fought downloading for a long time. I fought when people, how many bands do you know? Okay. Back in the day, because you obviously experienced the change of everything as well. But when everyone was like, download our record for free, do it, don't pay the label, the big bad evil label. But then when it comes time for the record to come out, nobody buys it because they've all downloaded it. Now you get dropped and you're like, okay, well, record labels are evil because they drop us and they don't put any money into us. And I watched our scene cannibalize itself via this vessel for years. And that drove me nuts. So it was like that, not that ties directly into your question, but I mean, it all fits hand in hand. As humans, that's what we do. So anytime that I have, not necessarily wanted to be contrarian, but I've wanted to just make people respect what we do, just allow people to take a little bit of pride in it and understand that maybe it's going to take longer. Maybe it's not going to sound as good. Maybe it's not going to be perfectly written with the perfect rhyme scheme, or maybe it's not going to be something that you could listen to whatever you want at the flick of a button, but it's something worth making those sacrifices for.
Yeah. I love what you're saying there, because I do think, that's why you see so many bands are able to exist in the world in which, frankly, you guys have for the past, 10 some odd years, where you are not a full-time band. Yes, you pay attention to it, you tour when you can, but you're not doing the, 250 shows a year. Like, can't wait to spend 7 months on the Warped Tour or whatever. Like, it's at a more sustainable clip, and partially because you have been able to identify that feeling of what you're talking about, where it's like, the more true to the vision I'm sticking to, whatever, good or bad, right. People can hate the next record and that's fine, but it's at least going to bring people in that you can find something, like you said, of worth, that it isn't just this disposable piece of art that is meant for a commercial purpose and a commercial purpose alone.
For sure. I fully resonate with that.
Yeah. And so kind of reflecting on you as a human being, like, I know you, I'll fast forward through some of the, biographical information, but I know you were born in New Jersey, and kind of, from what I can understand, sort of a typical suburban upbringing. Is that, very broad strokes? Is that roughly what we're talking about there?
I was born in Florida, and then.
Love it. I'm so glad that I hit that right on the nail on the head.
No, I was only lived there till I was 2 years old. So I came up in New Jersey. Okay. And small town, farm town, is where I was raised. It's actually the blueberry capital of the world. They're very proud of it. I'm proud of it. And it's a town where everybody knows each other type of a place. It's great for that.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And shout out to the blueberry capital of the world. I always loved when you pass through these cities on tour or in your travels, where you're just like, oh, so like I'll never, Gilroy, California. I live in California, but just like the garlic capital of the world. And I'm like, who says that? Who defines that? Like, are we submitting this to a board of blueberry, aficionados? Like, it's just, it's beautiful when towns can claim that.
I love it. I think that it is awesome and, kind of hilarious. Just because I don't know if there's an official way to determine that you are the capital of something like blueberries, because I'm sure there's places that produce way more, but that's just
totally.
Yeah.
But I'll bet you guys go off on a particular day of the year where you're like, yo, we got blueberry pancakes. We got, like, it's blueberry all day long, top to bottom.
You know it. We start setting up the day before it. The whole town comes to this festival. Obviously the Blueberry Festival is called. And, yeah, man, it gets wild. There's music, there's food trucks, there's blueberry, everything that you could imagine, crafts. It's a wonderful time.
And I also hope that there's so many themed, costumes. Like, I'm sure you wear, head to toe blue because that's just what you do, obviously.
Of course, yeah. I'm in full blue. I'm a blueberry. It's a
Right.
beautiful, beautiful time.
That's amazing. So, like you said, I mean, I really, what you're talking about in regards to like, school, like not reading a book and like getting into these positions where you found pockets where you were like, oh, I like this class and I don't like this class, or I'm good at this and I'm good at that. Did you gravitate to sports, as well? Or were you basically just kind of, for lack of a better term, like an indoor kid?
When I was younger, I was sports. Like I did baseball, football, hockey, the standards, the seasonal standards. I definitely, did that, because if I didn't do that, it was like, I probably wouldn't have done anything, and I didn't have like stuff to do inside. I didn't have like, all the video games and all that stuff. So it was that was my activity for sure. Being outside and doing stuff. Whether it be sports or building something or, getting my hands dirty.
Right. Just wandering around.
Yeah.
Like that. It's so, I mean, I know that you have children and I have a 13-year-old, and the concept of, pre-internet and pre-cell phones of just like, oh yeah, you just used to like walk around and like hopefully run into a person, or like just walk around and maybe you don't see anybody. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing today.
Right. I mean, look, I kind of look back and cherish those times, and those like
Totally.
back then maybe hated it, or like thought it was the most boring thing in the world. But, now looking back, sheesh, I didn't know how good we had it. I can't imagine not being able to unplug from my grade or my class online all the time. It would be more stressful than, way more stressful than it was, but yeah.
Totally. Yeah. No, there's definitely something nostalgic about it, where it's just especially when you do, whatever, you were going to the local mall and, having your mom drop you off there and just being like, oh man, I hope Doug's here. And then you're like, Doug, what's up? Like, it looks like we're going to the arcade or whatever. Like, nothing was better than those happenstance run-ins.
Good old Doug, man. I love that.
Yeah.
Good old Doug.
Yep. And so, like you said, music was, introduced to you at a relatively early age, but when did you start, I guess, capturing music that was, more your own, not so much your parents? Or do you have siblings? I didn't ask.
I do. I have, 3 sisters and a half brother. So I have, they're all halves. They're all like, it's mixed. I don't have anybody who is directly from my parents, but it's, between all of us, that I've had for my entire life. It's been three sisters and 1 brother.
Okay. Got it. And so, I mean, the reason I ask is like, obviously siblings influence is going to be, heavy in regards to exposing you to music, but when did you start to feel like you captured some of your own stuff?
I think I got into really my own style, or even writing music, probably was a sophomore in high school, where I was randomly watching a Pearl Jam documentary when they were making the record Yield, and for some reason, the way they made it, like the artistic look to the shots, everything just like hit me in a way that was like, that's what I have to do, write music. And the next thing you know, that was like what my obsession was, because that was like the only thing that I was ever good at until that point. And it just like, it came to me pretty naturally, pretty easily. And, within a few years I had, I guess, a couple EPs and stuff, and then the band got signed, and then there we go. But it was a very much like, a natural sway of events. And like I said, that I give credit to Pearl Jam's Yield, because that's what did it for me. That out of all the music that I liked, out of all the styles, out of everything that I was into, that specific documentary made me just start writing music like crazy.
I definitely a very unique story, because I mean, most people are, approaching wherever there's music videos, and usually it isn't the compulsion to create right away. I mean, especially within the context of, punk, hardcore, emo, indie rock, because usually it's the accessibility of something where you're like, oh, this is easy. I've got bar chords. I can play a few notes in there, and like, you start to pick it up. I just love where you came from, where it's watching this, this band that's coming off of, trying to shed some of their fan base
Right.
and being like, listen, we were really popular and like, we don't want all of this. So like, let's try to, really push the people that are going to stick around for us, especially on that record. But it just the process of putting something like that together was your lightning bolt moment of like, yes, now I know my purpose in the world. I'm writing music.
100%. I mean, it was that easy of a switch because like my entire life I had heard that, nobody knew what I was going to do. It was like, I was a huge question mark as a kid. Like, what are we going to do with this kid was really a big thing. Like,
Right.
what is he going to be? He's lazy. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't have any qualities. And it was very much like, as soon as that happened, it clicked and I'm like, that's it. That's what I'm doing. I'm writing songs and that is my purpose and has been, ever since. And it's a wild thing. Like I was in, a band where we did like some covers at the time. And when I was like, I want to write songs right after that documentary, they were like, we don't want to do it. I'm like, well, I quit the band. And then I just started another project and, started writing music with it. It was a very, got to do it right now type of a impulse move for sure.
Right. What type of stuff were you covering in that initial band?
In that initial band, it was just like whatever was really easy that we could find a singer to sing on the radio, like really, literally anything
Okay.
that we could find people to play along with and sing. And then my next band, well, not the next one, maybe the next one is where we started to dive into writing songs as well as covering songs. We would do like Choking Victim and like the more at the time very much more punk oriented and very pretend ska for sure that we were capable of. So it was more just like very much things that we could handle, as well as experimenting with writing anything that would be in that vein so we could just start playing shows and whatnot.
Right. I love, like, especially in the Northeast area, and this is coming from my perspective living in Southern California. I mean, ska was inescapable. I just always found it interesting when certain bands, and even, extending further into, just like the Liberty Spike punk, bands like Casualties and stuff like that. I always found it so interesting that the Northeast really had so many of those bands that were so influential and I mean, I knew they were influential, but just like hearing a lot of these stories that people share on the podcast where it was like, dude, Choking Victim, like I knew they were a big band, but like their influence looms so large over so many people. It's crazy.
It really is, man. It really is. I don't know what it was, man. Something just connected people to that. It was like, I remember the first time hearing it being like, I don't even know what they're saying. I have no idea. I know it feels like what I feel like though right now. And it was just it felt so right at the time. So right. So I love that other people shared that.
Yeah, no, it's great because it's like, that's especially too, where you can start to piece together some of the things that you like about music, whether it's like, okay, the fast paced action, or maybe it's the melody, or maybe it's, you just start to be able to articulate what you actually like in music as opposed to, just kind of whatever, following along with whatever's being presented to you. You start to be like, oh no, I like fast stuff because it makes me feel good.
Yep.
And like, that's great.
Yeah.
Hello, friend. You're probably curious about merchandise, right? Of course you are. That's why you listen to this podcast. You go to shows, you support the scene. How about going to rockabilly.com? And how about using the promo code 100 words or less, the number 100 words or less? That'll get you 10% off your entire order from Rockabilia. And what are they? They're an amazing company that sells officially licensed merch, which is important because the bands get paid. Everybody wins in this scenario. You support independent business, you get cool merch, the bands get paid, lickety split, boom, bam, whatever. I was trying to think of a nice little kitschy catchphrase there, but that didn't work. But regardless, you're like, you know what? I want to get a shirt from Black Sabbath. Cool. How about Slipknot? No problem. How about Eminem, Green Day, Marilyn Manson, Nirvana, Johnny Cash? The list goes on and on. You can find all of it wrapped up into one website. They ship it from the Midwest here in the United States. It gets to you. Check this out. Lickety split. How about that, huh? Call back to the earlier joke. Anyways, Joking aside, I love this company. I love what they do. I've ordered from them multiple times, and I know you will enjoy their service as well. Rockabilia.com, promo code 100 words or less, 10% off your entire order. Enjoy shopping, everybody. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know what it's like. You're just rolling through your day. Everything's fine. All of a sudden, you look at your phone, pop into some social media app, and then boom, you're just assaulted with all of these things that frankly weren't bumming you out before. And then you're like, you know what? I'm not as good as this person. I'm not at this point in my life versus this person that's like 10 years younger than me. And then you just start to spiral. It's bad. First of all, put your phone away. Second of all, a great resource is therapy. It is a perfect place for you to be able to disconnect from all of that external noise that influences the way you feel about yourself. I love therapy. I've done it for many years, and I wholeheartedly endorse that practice. And that's why I love working with BetterHelp. Because if you're thinking of starting therapy, please give BetterHelp a try. It's all online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and then you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for zero additional charge. Stop comparing yourself to others and start focusing on yourself with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Ray today to get 10% off of your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Ray. Try it out. When you started to, write your own music, and like you said, I mean, the trajectory of the early November has been well documented in regards to, you weren't even intentionally starting this as a band, and all of a sudden it had to be a band. When you started to get that, attention from others, because you strike me, and just again, this is maybe, or not again, but this is maybe playing a little armchair psychology. Like you don't strike me as a very I guess as a reserved frontman, I'll say, where you're not the person that's, getting up on stage and being like, look at me, I'm clearly the coolest person in the room. I mean, I know you are, but like, if I'm wrong, then that's totally fine. But when attention started to get paid to you for the music that you were, writing, did you have to, I guess, adjust to that and start to understand how you were going to navigate the world moving forward?
Most definitely. I think, you always have an idea of what something is going to be like, what it's going to play out like, how it's really going to work, for you. But when it came to this, like when we started playing shows as a drive-through band, which, I mean, if you're looking at it in terms of like genres of music, whatever you were at the time, if you were on drive-through, you were pretty much like a pop band. That's how the scene looked at you. You were a pop band. And I would set up all the way on the side of the stage, back, and like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be far stage left, like you can barely see me, and I'm just going to yell and do my thing over here. And as time went on, it was like, whether management, label, everybody being like, all right, you got to be center stage, you got to make eye contact with people, you got to like learn how to pull the crowd in. And that was a process for me, if I'm being honest. It was being a naturally awkward person when it comes to, at least at that point in my life. Like I've developed probably a lot more charisma since then, to use the term charisma, but like I've definitely developed probably more of that later in life. But in the beginning, it was a adjustment. It was like a shock, being like, how do you deal with this attention? You go from your whole life barely holding a conversation, and then all of a sudden being like, you got to like put on a face now because you have to talk to this person over here who's not only in charge of marketing your record, but you also have to, then take pictures with people and navigate that whole thing. And it was a little bit of an adjustment for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very, very diplomatic way of putting an adjustment.
Yeah.
Just
yes.
the idea of, especially once you are in that, even if you're playing in front of, just 100 people or whatever, it's still that notion of, you're not actually saying this in your head. Like, I got to put on a show. You're just like, oh, I want to, spill my guts on the floor. And like, hopefully the people that are watching will resonate. But it isn't until where you start to get either those person to person interactions where it's like, your lyrics change the way that I view the world or whatever, just that feedback. And then on top of it, like you're saying, the business aspect of like, oh, I got to really perform for this person because, my musical fate could be at their fingertips.
Yeah.
There's so much you have to navigate.
Oh yeah. So much. And I feel like there's so many things that we didn't even realize we signed up for in the beginning. Like so many, our contract situation when we signed our initial contract was, we rushed it as fast as we possibly could because we thought that the label was going to change their mind and then we wouldn't get the deal and we wouldn't be able to, live the fairy tale or whatever it was that we were was in our minds of what we were trying to do. And there was a lot of oversight there. And that came back to bite me later down the road. But, initially it's just understanding, giving the keys to the kingdom to kids that are 18, 16, and 17, really, and saying okay, here's a business, do it, is without management is really a, it's
irresponsible.
Yeah. I look back at that being nobody was there to tell us any better. It was just we were just doing it. And that's why the first tour we did, first Warped Tour we did, we flipped a van. We had we lost everything in the desert. We rolled twice. The next 2 weeks later, we got the van stolen, a new van stolen with all of our gear again lost. And it was we were just prone to these types of mistakes because we did not know what we were doing. And then on the business side, it was we had no idea. We were just, all of a sudden people were paying attention and coming to shows. So it didn't matter,
Right. No, right. Because all you're thinking is the fact that, especially when you start to think about things in terms of, you'll never forget that moment where you're just what do you mean you're going to pay us $100 to play a show? And then all of a sudden you're just wait, we can headline a show for $10,000. That's the most money I'll ever see in my entire life. And then everything else is what, dude, I'm retiring after this. This doesn't even make any sense. I don't know.
This is it here. Yeah. I've said that probably so many times in my life. Once this happens, then we're good. How many times? But, yeah. That's funny, man. That's really funny. Cause I do remember getting paid the first time, $100 and being yo, this is life just happened. We're there, boys.
Absolutely. Because to your point, you are operating off of pure instinct, and your instincts are, especially if you're coming at it from the lens that most independent musicians come at with, where it's if anybody pays attention to this dumb thing that I'm doing, I cannot believe it.
Yeah.
This is wild. And you're going to pay me to yell into a microphone on stage? That doesn't make any sense, but okay, I'll do it.
Yeah. Out of key, nonetheless, for sure.
Right. And so, to your point, when you started to, kind of build a following and then, participate in all the things that you guys had to participate in, willingly, and then to a certain point, I'm sure unwillingly as well, where it's oh, cool. Especially, I just always love when you have the versatility to clearly pick up an acoustic guitar and go to your morning radio show and then obviously play a show at night. I'm sure there were so many of those random situations where you got thrown in because it's oh yeah, Ace can just play guitar and do that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There were many of those long days. And, I embraced all of that stuff, and I still do. When things come up like that, or when it's an insane schedule that's happening, I embrace that stuff. I still feel grateful to just be in the position, but yeah, it's definitely not one thing I've learned, and this is through trying to help other people navigate it and be able to learn how to exist or even become a band to begin with, and take those steps. Is it's not for everybody. You got to be a certain type of person to do that, to wake up super early, stay up super late, ignore everything that's being thrown at you all the time, still have a business mindset while being able to be a family person at the same time, and keep a moral compass and write things that are genuine, that can actually facilitate some type of, or service some type of need that the person listening can take something positive from it, or take something from it. It's a real head game. And I think it's also probably I'm glad I didn't have the opportunity to go to college, because I feel I learned so much more just by beating my head against a wall with this for the past 25 years that it's a, it's like, I feel like a old wise man sometimes. And then I feel like an idiot the other times.
Right. Well, I mean, you definitely going through, touring and putting out records and being a part of, the music industry and all that stuff. Like it does feel like you not only learn a lot, to your point, but then you kind of fast forward through certain years where it's just like, oh, like, yeah, I've never sat in a classroom, but yet I know how to, get something done on time or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Something that interests me that I've heard you speak about in other interviews is the idea of, like not listening to music to find inspiration and then connecting that idea to like the world around you rather than just, existing in a band. I mean, you and I both know many peers that have written their second or third record about like, man, being on tour is crazy, like the tour record.
Yeah.
And like when you're not connected in any way, shape or form to, the world that most people inhabit, when did you personally feel like that was a more important catalyst for you and your creativity? Was there, I mean, I know it probably wasn't like a moment where you woke up one day where you're like, oh yeah, that's way more important. But when do you feel that shift started to happen?
I think, I for a long time, I struggled. I don't want to say struggle, but I did the whole songwriting game for a while, right? Where it was we'd be in writers rounds, you'd be pitching constantly, you'd be doing, writing 2-3 songs a day, every single day, trying to get somebody to pick it up. And, that works. You get like maybe 1% of the time you get something actually landed, and then you're with like 8 other people. So you don't even get really paid for it anyway. And I think being a part of that whole machine really was like, shifted my perspective in the way of like, okay, I'm not chasing a hit song anymore. I'm not chasing something that everybody is after. I mean, really what I want to do is, just observe the world, and what is going on in it. And the things that have always been more impactful to me are when someone takes something away from it. And, you probably know as well as I do, like the things that are most gratifying and really, help you continue this journey is not the fancy things, is not the magazines, is not, or back in the day magazines, now, the profiles, whatever. It's when somebody comes up to you in a weird place, a random time. I mean, I can't count the amount of times, and this is one of the things I'm most grateful for. I cannot count the amount of times in a random place where I might be having a thought that is extremely dark, or that is like, I can't do this anymore. I've got nothing left. Nobody cares. I feel like the biggest failure in the world, whether that's justified or not. We all go through these moments. And when I feel that, it's like a weird thing. Somebody will come up to me in a random place, in a parking lot, in a store or wherever, and just be like, hey, are you that guy? And I'll be like, of course. But then they'll say something like how it impacted them in a way that helped them get over something that was really difficult, or a dark time that they couldn't get through. And they don't even understand what they're doing for me at that moment. But when I realize that that's really what the purpose is, and that's really what drives me, it's not the I hate to say fame, but whatever that comes, however you want to encapsulate that, whatever that means, it's not that. It's the ability to be something that someone needs, in a way, because that's what the service of art is for someone to get lost somewhere that they can then find their way out with a little bit of a guide. And it's a very, that to me is more what I care about. And to touch back to your point, the reason why I don't, really sink into music all the time now is because it ignites something in me that's no longer peaceful. It's no longer like I'm happy for everyone, obviously, who's successful. That's great. But when it's something that I see clearly manipulating what the idea is of what they're doing, like not being genuine to what this whole thing really is. It's like, I don't want to see everybody become successful just because they can be successful. Like, what is, for me, it's very much, I know that that's probably a weird way to answer this question, but I'm definitely, when I noticed that is where I got really heavily into, okay, what is my purpose here with this? What am I really trying to do? And if I'm not going to be the most famous guy in the world where I never have to think about money again, then my alternative to that is I'm just going to help as many people as I possibly can with music. And my way to do that is to connect real feelings to it and not get lost in the sauce of comparing my band to every single other band that is out there.
Yeah, specifically, well, you didn't ask a question. It was a circuitous route, but I completely understand what you're talking about in the idea of the pursuit of whatever it is that is typified as success within the context of everything, whether it's art, whether it's, I got to move up to be a manager or assistant manager or whatever, like all of the things that you have to do in order to have those trappings of success be foisted upon you by all of the expectations. But when you ask that question of yourself, like you did, of just being like, what's the core component of whatever it is that I'm doing? For one, am I enjoying what I'm doing?
Right.
And for two, is this resonating with somebody, beyond just like my initial, beyond my child and my wife or whatever, like just it's touching people in a meaningful way. Cause I'm sure I can almost guarantee that you would be doing this if 10 people were paying attention to it.
Totally. I at least I think so,
Right. You'd be doing some version of this where it's like, oh, I mean, yes, like, 10 people is an exaggeration, but like you would be like, cause and I'm sure you've seen different iterations of this where it's like some people, especially now that this, broad music scene has existed for, 40, 50 years of, indie rock, emo, punk, whatever you want to call it. It's like now we all are confronting the fact that we have to age gracefully within a youth-based movement where it's like none of us or that are connected to this. It's like, I'm 43 damn years old and I'm doing a podcast about independent music. Like, sorry, that's not normal. But at the same time, it's like, well, it's because I still care about it. And that, like, to your point or to what you do, like you still care about this greatly. So why do we need to do this? But we don't need to be like, you were talking about charisma earlier, where it's not like you were saying Riz there. So you were like, we got.
I wanted to. I really wanted to.
It was on the tip of your tongue, I know. But just that idea where it's like you would be pursuing this art on any level because that is, like you said, once you saw the Pearl Jam Yield documentary, it's like, yeah, I'm going to be doing this regardless if I'm working in a bagel shop or working at a bank or whatever. It's like, this art has to get out, whatever that may be.
Yeah. I think there would be some type of craft to whatever it is that I do. And I think that may be the bigger thing is like, whether it be art, whether you want to call it that or whatever, I think whatever my job would be, even at a bagel shop, I would probably attack it through the lens or through the viewpoint of craft and not just like, okay, here I am. I have to do this one thing. I'm going to do it just to get it done. And then I'm going to move on to the next thing. Like I would probably always put some type of, spin on it in that way, because that's just, I feel like, that's how you really connect with that type of purpose, is just like you put a little bit of love on it. I do think though, a bagel shop does seem nice. There often, honestly, I do have this thought, and I don't know if this is totally random, but to talk about aging gracefully, all that stuff, like I'm going to be honest here, like probably twice a year, I'll probably like look for like UPS driver jobs or FedEx jobs or something that I could, driving is my other quality, like something that I could do to be like, I don't know if I got any more gas in me. What can I do? I can drive. That's what I can do. Maybe I'll be a trucker. And I'm like, this happens probably twice a year where I'm like, what potentially could I do? Because this is a very youth driven, situation that we exist in. And especially now, I mean, it's like so many, everybody who's newly, I want to say like famous in this world is extremely young. And it's that is in itself something really interesting to try and deal with, and not to compare myself to, because you can't, you're never going to get younger But and that seems to be where the money flows, because I mean, we live in a social media driven world right now, and that's who is driving social media. So it's a very interesting type of thing that we live in, and it is funny to think about, though. I do have those moments of like, okay, yeah, what else could I do? What else could I do if I can't deal with this anymore? Because I'll tell you, like, writing, even the songwriting thing, like getting into that point where it was like, okay, when people started including in their pitches pop punk, like that's when I knew it was time for me to get out. When it was like, when you have like, a pitch deck from a label being like, okay, this artist, we're looking to make this artist who is unnamed, okay, yet have a pop punk song, and we want this to be, we look for it to be like a radio success. I'm like, you want me to write a pop punk song about, they give you a list of, and I'm not gonna get into that, but they get very specific, and it's like, I don't think I can do that. I don't think that I can be that guy right now,
I am always thrilled to talk to you about merch, right? And how about this company, evilgreed.net? For those of you that are not familiar or have not listened to me speak all of the positive things, even if they weren't paying me, I would be talking about this company because I think they're incredible. So they are an online merchandise purveyor. Obviously, you know how websites work. So you go to evilgreed.net, you go there, you poke around, and you're like, wow, this is like the best merch store I've ever seen, because they sell vinyl, shirts, everything that you could possibly want, but they have a very specific point of view. They sell what I like to call artistic heavy stuff. And if you listen to the show, I guarantee you will like 95% of the bands that exist on there, whether it's bands like Angel Dust or record labels like Triple B, or if you're like, I want to pre-order the new Nails record, boom, how about that? They have Neurosis, they have Midwife, like Sargent House, all of that cool stuff. And they have labels like Flat Spot and Triple B. So they cover, again, all the artistic heavy stuff. They ship from Berlin, Germany, but do not let that scare you. Here in the United States, the exchange rate is very in our favor. So you dive in, you order, it ships to you very quick. I've ordered from them here in California, and I've got it in like 8-9 days. It's amazing. So go to evilgreed.net, shop to your heart's content, and then win, because you'll look cool with all the rad vinyl and shirts and hoodies that you bought.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
This dovetails nicely, that train of thought, into this question where you and other bands of your, for lack of a better term, generation or class have been able to do this, where you don't shy away from the fact that, like, clearly that people are always going to like certain records of yours. Like, there's that age old joke of just like, oh, the demo is better,
right?
Like, your earlier stuff is always going to be better, even though it ostensibly is not, because people are dumb and that's just the way that people are, and that's fine. But you've been able to thread this balance where clearly you're putting out new music, and, in my opinion, it's only gotten better over time. But then you also aren't, shirking away from, like, yes, there's probably only opportunities for us to do this and continue on being a band, because we're able to, nostalgically look back in the past, but not make it, so completely transparent, where it's just like, all right, here we go. Here's our, 17 and a half year anniversary of the first time that I stubbed my toe on this record or whatever. Like, I'm sure you've had to be really deliberate in the way that you're trying to, like, thread both needles, or has it just come, like, relatively naturally as you've figured out how to, keep your musical flair going?
Well, I think it was interesting because in 2019, right before, the everything that happened in 2020, we were setting up for a 5 years down the road doing this anniversary stuff of 20-year albums and all that. But I remember at that point, the focus was on new music. It was before this like really nostalgic wave came upon us with like the When We Were Youngs, all those festivals that came out that really shifted, I feel like, everybody's idea of what this emo scene was. And then, even like, looking at all the emo nights that are out there and stuff like that really shifted people to, okay, now we're all doing anniversary things. We're all doing, everybody came back. And it was a very, if you weren't doing that old stuff, you weren't going to get certain things. So it was a thing that we had to put a little bit of thought into, because I am always the type of person who's like, I honor and love the old stuff. I love that people love it. So I'll always play it. There will always be songs that I always play no matter what. But I always like to leave the door open to something else that could possibly happen as well. And, it became this, this thing that was like, okay, we have to tag an anniversary on it. That's how we're going to get this offer. That's pretty much what we're looking at now. And, it's a really interesting thing to try and navigate. I do love nostalgia. I love it. I, every once in a while I'll see pictures of myself or videos, the promos that are out there. And it's like, I look at like a very much younger version of me. And I'm like, have a mixed bag of emotions that come with that. But
Sure.
yeah, but it's a, I appreciate it. I respect it. I love it. I love that people love it. I love that it still gives me the ability to do what it is that I'm doing. I know The Room's Too Cold is definitely the fan favorite and gets people the most fired up of anything that I've ever done. And it's, I have no problem with that. I do think, I like writing and creating, and, I'm going to try to keep working that in. Honestly, off of this record is probably the best response that we've gotten off of anything new in a quite a long time, and that's kind of cool to see.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's heartening when people, especially too, because I know that you've seen this cycle exist as well, where it's like, band has put out music for 10 years or whatever, puts out some new music, and it's like, it's okay, it's not bad or whatever. But then when you continue to go back to that well and put out more music, then people have the ability to either appropriately contextualize the music or actually pay attention to it for what it's worth and be like, oh, you know what? Like, I totally thought this band was just this, whatever, like flash the pan or whatever opinions people bring to the table. And then you can be like, well, no, like we're feel like we're putting out our best music now, but it takes that process of just, kind of going back to the well and being like, well, no, you guys are going to get more, whether you want it or not. No,
right.
Yeah. Touring, like that is obviously, something you did for many, many years. And then, now you do in fits and starts, very intentionally. When you were touring on a regular clip, what was your relationship with it like? Did you enjoy most of it? Was it difficult to kind of, gear yourself up for it? What was I know it's not an easy answer, but, relationship with touring, how'd that go?
I think that it was hard for me. It was something that was, difficult because like I said, I wasn't great at like being that guy, the party guy was never my scene. And if that was around me, especially existing in the early days, like that was everywhere. The scene was obsessed with this idea of, I guess like the old school rock star, whatever. It felt like that. And, for me, it was to be like, I would just sit by myself. Like if we were on a bus, I would be in my bunk, headphones on, blanket over my head, trying to write a song and ignore the rager that was occurring 5 feet from my head. And it was like, for me in those beginning years, it was tough like that, doing all of that touring. And until we sort of became more established and could tour a little bit more comfortably on our own terms, or on my own terms, really was when it started to, get a little bit easier for me. And then, I figured out how to do it that in a way that works for me. But yeah, it was, it was wild back in the day, and I didn't hate it at all. I did love it, and I, still do. It's just funny. It was hard in the beginning. It was like real interesting to be thrown into that world. Like imagine, I never got invited to a party ever in high school, yet now I'm at a party every single night of my life. And it's like, I don't know how to exist in that world. But yeah, that was it was a weird thing to get used to, and it wasn't easy. And I had like, my relationship at home, and you have to, cut ties with certain friends or not be who you want to be for your family. And it's a really tough thing. And I mean, even now it's tough because having to tour now is great. And I have my own purpose and I've have it all really well defined. Whereas then I didn't have it as well defined, but now I do. And it's really a joy, but it is very difficult being away from my children and missing their events, their recitals, their school dances, their first time for doing this or that. And that's a whole other bag of issues that you end up dealing with. And it's like, okay, well, look, I'm in my 40s now. This is what I do. At this point, it's like, this is me. So I have to, one, do it to be able to, continue to generate growth. But at the same time, it can be a double-edged sword,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's you, as in every profession, you really have to weigh, the work-life balance exists, even though, the work of creating music, most people would be like, oh, whatever. That's not even,
Yeah.
you're the center of the party, like using the metaphor of what you're talking about. You're the soundtrack to the party every night. It's like, yeah, but I'm still not there.
Right.
So it's still a thing. Yeah. When you, like you mentioned over the past, since early November and touring, started to die down, like you said, you've participated in many, songwriting sessions, writing for people and all that sort of stuff. Did you feel, I'm guessing, yes, like you had to flex a completely different side of your songwriting muscle, or was that something that, again, kind of came relatively natural for you to be like, oh, I just need to think about this a slightly different way than what I do for my own music?
It was the first co-write that I ever did for myself. That was the most awkward one. It was those first rounds. After the band took a hiatus early November in 2007. And from the years 2008, I really focused on making a solo record and had the whole, we had the whole plan behind it. The label did. It was like everyone was gung-ho, but the one stipulation was you have to write some songs that we can market to the mainstream. So I had to go on this little trip of writing with songwriters, which was the first time that I had ever experienced it. And I remember coming out of my first session, for a song that I was trying to write and being just like, felt so violated. It felt so awkward and hard and weird. And I was the most confused that I've ever been. And I said to myself, I never want to do that again. But then the label got the song like 2 days later from the guy who I wrote it with. And everyone who heard it was like, this has to be on the this is this song. This is the best song that you've ever done. And I'm like, I guess. But then like it ended up becoming like a really good song. And unfortunately, we didn't end up doing that version because then things got so messy business wise. There was a whole dramatic thing, but that was my entry point into songwriting. So naturally, after fast forward a few years, Early November gets back together. I've been a producer for a long time at this point, doing co-writes with many bands. I did a publishing deal where I was, with BMG, just writing and whatnot, doing all of that stuff. And I had some great success with it, but it was very much from the mindset of that same place that I always came from, because that's what made me stand out. My ability to take a feeling and turn it into something is like what I probably hang my hat on, because I've been in too many sessions where, and I'm not like patting myself on the back at all. I'm just trying to answer clearly, but it's, it's, I'll be in this moment where it's like, okay, what do we have to write today? What do we have to do? And like, it's weird. I'll close my eyes. I'll think about it for like a minute. And then all of a sudden, the song comes out. And it's in most sessions that I've been in, whether it's by myself, with one solo artist or with a group of people that are all pitching for the same, Kelly Clarkson or whatever, I've always been able to like do that type of thing and get into that place, and then all of a sudden it's like you have your thing that you can do, and it's almost like you charge up, and then I feel like a Pokemon or whatever, but it's just like you charge and then bam, there comes the song. And that's what I've always been able to do. That's how I've written all my stuff. And it's like, that came naturally to me. So it was a pretty easy thing to wrap my head around, but then, like it gets complicated like anything else. And then, you got to realize, like I was saying earlier, who you're actually writing for, and then what that is going to become, and who is that really going to service? Who is the beneficiary of the work that you're doing?
Right. Two last things I want to hit on was the fact that, clearly you put out your own solo music for years and, under multiple monikers, and with, the early November existing alongside of, everything else that you do. Was it difficult for you to kind of be like, all right, I'm shedding whatever, even though most people know the early November to be, clearly you've played in a band, so you obviously have more people contributing to it. But was it easy for you to shift away to be like, okay, yes, I'm just going to put, all my focus into, the early November, and then whatever I do solo-wise or whatever, like that can be just funneled towards that. Was that a difficult, I guess I wouldn't even call it a difficult transition, but was it easy for you to, put your focus towards that?
Pretty easy, because it's always been pretty standard in how I come about writing songs. Like I'll have the idea, I'll have melodic ideas for everything. Sometimes I'll have parts, for other people to do already within the song that happens. Because for me, I've been able to I got into recording a long time ago, so I was used to demoing everything out and then everybody hearing it anyway, usually for the first time. So it was pretty easy as far as transition goes, but there's nothing like sitting there and creating with people. That energy is awesome. It's like I could get locked in my head for sure for way too long when it comes to sitting there. If I have nobody being like, no, this is cool, this is the right way to do it. If I don't have that, I'll work on something, the initial song for however long it takes. But I mean, I have redone songs probably 1,000 times. So there's nothing like that, that spark that you get with other people. It's very cool and something that is I do cherish. I think it's awesome. So I love when me and Jeff get together and get to jam on something.
Yeah, absolutely. Get into a small sweaty room and, bang out loud guitars or semi-quiet guitars, whatever you do.
There you go. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Selfishly, the last thing I want to ask is because I don't get to speak to many people who have named their child the fourth, because my child is the fourth as well.
Nice.
I'm the third. And so that's a weird choice. Like, I mean, I'm saying this like, whatever, pot calling the kettle black.
Right.
Was that a difficult, choice for you to kind of, continue that lineage, or was it like, oh no, this is like drawn in the stars, baby. Of course we're doing this.
Well, it was, I guess, let me think back. It was, well, we didn't know what we were going to have. We wanted it to be a surprise, and we were tossing up a couple things. And at the end of the day, it came down to being like, okay, well, we're going to make him the fourth. We're going to continue the journey here. And I just felt like, I don't know, it felt like the right thing to do. It felt like it was, it felt good. It felt good. But, how about you? Because it is a weird thing. The 4 is a lot.
It absolutely is. And it's like anytime I speak to people about that, where it's, being the third is already a lot. Yeah. And then being like, oh, I guess we're just going to continue this on like we're some, English monarch or whatever. But it's like, to your point, just that feeling of like, well, it's gone this far, and it's kind of cool, especially too when it's a name that doesn't sound, sound like that it's from the, 1700s or something like that, where it's like, oh, it's relatively, timeless, so to speak. Right. Then it feels a little less cumbersome. So that's why I personally was comfortable with it, where I was like, oh yeah, let's continue this on. It's kind of sick, and it's a funny thing for them to have a conversation piece later in life. But yes, it is very, you really do have to wrestle around with that idea where it's like, I'm going in the same way. Like I'm and I'm sure you've experienced this too, having kids, where it's like when you see other kids with names that are, that you would never label your child, where it's just like, I mean, oh yes, the second grader's name's Patient.
Right.
And you're just like, what? Like, how are you burdening that child with that quality? And
Right.
then in turn, that people could say that to you, where it's just like, dude, the fourth, can you calm down?
Take it easy, please.
It's like, you're like, I guess not. Like, I guess nobody can calm down. Like, there's names all over the place, and people can do whatever the hell they want. So be it. So,
yeah. No,
well, that's good. We will continue to wave the torch of the fourth, whatever that may be.
That's great. You know what? You don't get to meet very many of them. You don't see that very often, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's the highlight for me. That's awesome.
Look, that's why I put this button on the very end, where I was like, I just have to ask, because it's like that. We're good or bad. It is a rarefied commodity. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, Ace, thank you so much for hanging out. I genuinely appreciate you letting me ping pong around your brain.
Yes, I'm grateful for it. Thank you very much for having me.
There we go. Thank you very much, Ace, for hanging out, and thank you to his publicist, Becky. Always like to give a shout out to people who are behind the scenes putting this stuff together. I always appreciate their patience and, scheduling, all that other stuff, because, getting two people to be at the same place at the same time sometimes is hard. Anyways, shout out to both of them. Appreciate that. And appreciate you. You're showing up. And granted, this is on demand, so you can show up whenever, but still, I appreciate you. Next week is a little bit of a different episode, because I haven't had one of my friendversation episodes in probably like a year and a half or so, maybe 2 years. But I wanted to have my friend Joey Cahill, proprietor of Wanna Hear It Records out of Watertown, Massachusetts, and obviously contributor to the best of year-end list that we always do. But I wanted to get into it with him, a nice 30, 40-minute conversation about asking a simple question. Why is hardcore so popular right now? Of course, there's a million different reasons, but I have been so fascinated to watch this, resurgence, or whatever you want to call it, peaked interest, whatever it is, over the past, I would say 3 to 4 years is when it really felt like it started to galvanize in ways that I personally haven't noticed before. And because I'm an old human being, that's why I'm curious about it. Anyways, I have Joey Cahill on the show next week, as we both try to answer the question, why is hardcore so popular right now? But until then, please be safe, everybody. The show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Trust me in saying that no matter who you are, mental health challenges can affect you, and how you manage them can make all of the difference. That's why everyone should have access to mental health support that meets them where they are and helps them get through. BetterHelp provides online therapy on your schedule. It's flexible, simple to use, and more affordable than in-person therapy. Connect with a licensed therapist selected just for you. Learn more at betterhelp.com. That's betterhelp.com.
This is Tracy V. Wilson from Stuff You Missed in History Class. Toyota is the best resale value brand for 2024, according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com. So choose a Toyota and get the confidence that your vehicle will retain its value year after year, ride after ride. And check out the all-new 25 Camry, or test drive a stylish and affordable Corolla. Find out more at buyatoyota.com. Vehicles' projected resale value is specific to the 2024 model year. For more information, visit Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com. Kelley Blue Book is a registered trademark of Kelley Blue Book Company, Inc. Toyota, let's go places.
Is your body trying to tell you something? Tiredness, lack of focus, trouble sleeping, bloating? These things can affect your quality of life. That's where Symbiotica can help. The supplement brand is made with quality ingredients, free of seed oils and shady additives, and they taste delicious. The time to feel better starts now at Symbiotica.com. Use the code IHEART to get 20% off and free shipping on your subscription order. That's CYMBIOTIKA.com. That's Symbiotica.com.